Have this sheet in your bulletin. And so this is basically what it's going to be all about for these four questions. These four, does everybody got one of these? Four true and false questions. You don't have to answer these now, we're going to walk through them, and at the end, you should have the answer. So true or false, in order to follow God, you have to give up everything you like, family, work, hobbies, and friends, everything you like. True or false? Doing the answer now will be certain. True or false? Second question. In order to serve Christ, you need to take classes and officially work for the church. True or false? You know, if you know all the answers, I don't need to do much more. True or false? Jesus is all about religion and organized church. Okay. True or false? God chooses only very special people who have some unique gifts. True or false? Okay, it's going to make this real easy. So you didn't get all the answers, they are all false, and that is the correct answer. But we're going to walk through it anyway, because, you know, I don't have anything else to do with it today. So here we go. So we're going to walk through these readings, especially Jesus and those four disciples who were the fishermen. Okay, we're going to follow their example through the Gospel of Matthew and a little bit in the Gospel of John, and see where it all plays out. So in the reading we had today, Matthew 4, 12 and 23, you're not going to read that all over again, but you know the story now. You've heard it at least 2 times. Jesus calls 4 disciples, Simon Peter, and Andrew, and they drop their nets to follow him. And then the sons of Zebedee, James and John, they not only drop their nets and leave their boats, but they leave their father and follow him. And so God asks, what do you have to do? And one of the responses was, we have to give up everything. You know, if you just read this passage, yeah, that's what it says. You have to give up everything. If you read just this passage, the first question would be true, not false. And the first question would be, yeah, you have to give up everything in order to follow Jesus, just like the disciples did. They dropped their nets, they left their father, they did all that. If you just read this passage. So let's read some more and see what really plays out. This passage says that. Well, let's see what chapter 8 says. Chapter 8 of Matthew. Again, take it home and look them up yourself. Chapter 8 of Matthew, verse 14 says this. This is after the disciples are following Jesus. Scroll on. It's a little later on. It says this. When Jesus entered Peter's house. Hey, he still has a house. He didn't leave his house. He saw his mother-in-law. Hey, Peter is still married. He still has a family. He still has a woman. Okay? In bed with a fever, and Jesus touches her hand, and the fever leaves her, and she gets up. Well, there you go. You have to leave everything behind? Oh, no. In this passage, it looks like Jesus says, I want you to keep your family. I want you to keep your friends. I like the fact you're part of a family. I will lift that up. I will hold that close. You know, it says that even heals the mother-in-law, and I won't go any farther with that one. You know, he's even there for all parts of the family. So, you know, now it's looking like that first sentence must be false. But Jesus doesn't want us leaving everything. In fact, Jesus doesn't want us leaving anything at all. Jesus is willing to work with us with our talents and gifts and abilities. After all, who gives us those talents, gifts, and abilities other than God? God wouldn't give us a bunch of things that we're really good at and say, well, I don't want you doing anything with those. No, God wants us to use all of them. So let's go on and see what else there is. Just another paragraph down from, they're leaving some mother-in-law's house now. They're doing some other stuff. Now, in the very paragraph later, starting with verse 23, here's what happens. Jesus gets into the boat, and his followers, who are fishermen, follow him. A windstorm comes on the sea. There's a great, the boat is being swamped by waves, and Jesus is sound asleep. The disciples, the fishermen, wake him up and say, Lord, save us, we're perishing. And he says to them, why are you afraid, O you of little faith? And he gets up, rebukes the winds and sea. There's a dead calm. Okay. They're amazed. And what kind of fellow is this fellow who we're following? This is the 8th chapter, so it's still pretty early in their journey. They're not really sure who this is yet. But here's the thing. Now, I've done whole sermons on this story. But here's the piece to lift up today. Where's Jesus? He's in the fishing boat. Where are the fishermen? They're in their fishing boat. That first story you read, it sounded like they left their fishing nets behind, and their fishing boat, then their father and all that. But now we're finding out, yeah, they may have left them for a while, but not forever. Jesus wants them to be engaged with what their lives are Jesus will meet them in their lives on their fishing boats. And when the storms come, Jesus will say to his disciples, and then also say to us, in the midst of the storms of life, the storms of your work, the storms that hit you in life, I'll be there with you. And guess what? Because I'm with you, you don't have to be so afraid anymore. Don't be so fearful about it all. What Jesus is doing with his disciples, and so with us, is lifts us up and says, you know, you are fishermen, but you can be more than fishermen. Yeah, stay being fishermen. Stay being where you are, but be more than that. And lifts the disciples up to a whole other plane of what they could do to bring about the kingdom of heaven. So there's that piece. Then we get to, is that 8:23? Did I just do 8:23? Yes. And chapter 10, Matthew chapter 10, verse 5, beginning of verse 5, is pretty cool, okay? The disciples now know that they don't have to be afraid as much anymore because Jesus is with them even in the boat. But that's not all it means to be a disciple, to then not be afraid and engage with your life as it is. Jesus wants more than that. And so in the 10th chapter, Jesus gives these fishermen a mission. He gives them something to do. He says in the 10th chapter, starting around verse 5, he says to them, as you go, he's sending them out. He says, as you go, proclaim the good news that the kingdom of heaven has come near. That's key. The kingdom of heaven has come near. Jesus is about bringing the kingdom of heaven to earth. The kingdom of heaven has come near, so guess what? You're going to go out and you're going to cure the sick and raise the dead and cleanse the leper and cast out demons. Fishermen. They're going to do this? How in the world are these fishermen ever going to do this? They don't have any special skills to do this, but they do it anyway. They trust in what Jesus is telling them to do because by this time, they've traveled with Jesus for a while. And I think that's the key. They've been with Jesus for a while. They have seen Jesus heal. They have heard Jesus teach. They have seen what effect Jesus has on others. They have been with Jesus for long enough to know that they can truly trust what Jesus tells them. When Jesus is telling them to go and do these things, they will trust that Jesus will be their guide and Jesus will be with them. I think that's the key. We have been with Jesus for a while. And that is our key as well. The closer and more we are with Jesus, the more we will understand what Jesus is asking us to do, and the more we will simply trust what Jesus asks us to do is actually possible, even though it seems impossible. So moving on to chapter 14. Moving on there. 14. Oh, here we go. So here's this passage. Remember all the things I've been telling you. Here we go. Immediately, Jesus has been doing a few things now. I'll tell you that in a second. But immediately, Jesus says, he says to the disciples, go and get into the boat. It's that picture, by the way. Go and get into the boat and go and sail on the other side, and I will meet you on the other side. He dismisses his crowds, goes up the mountain to pray, evening comes, he's there alone. But by this time, the boat is out in the middle of the Sea of Galilee. There's a storm coming up, there's all sorts of stuff happening. Jesus comes down, he walks on the water, he goes out in the boat. Simon Peter sees him walking out in the water. Good old Simon Peter thinks he can do the same thing. He gets out of the boat, he starts walking. But lo and behold, Simon Peter sinks into the water, and Jesus doesn't ask him all sorts of questions. He just grabs a hold of him and listens out in the safety and says, why do you have such little faith? Why do you have such little faith? Right? That's what Jesus says. Okay, so here's the really cool thing about this. They just said 5,000 people right before this. That's one of the neat things. The other neat thing about this, again, you can do a lot with this story. But the neat thing about this for today is that Jesus is once again on the fishing boat, or he's on the sea, and he's telling his disciples, go on your boats. He's not telling them to get away from what their lives are all about. He says, engage with your lives, and when the struggles in life hit, guess what? I'll walk and I will meet you. You don't have to ask me. I will come and get you. All you have to do is have a little bit of faith. Trust that I will save you. And when hard times come and disasters come in our life, God's going to come to us, Jesus will come to us, and he won't say, well, why did you get yourself in that crappy situation anyway? Why didn't you learn a few things? I mean, don't you know the Ten Commandments by now? Why weren't you just following them? No. Jesus won't ask us that then. He may well ask us that a little later. But what he'll do right